Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to build and deploy an image recognition app with React, NodeJS, and Clarifai. Clarifai is an artificial intelligence company. It provides some pre-trained models that we can use to predict labels of images. We are going to integrate with the general image recognition model in this video. Here's a demo of how the app looks like. The user can either provide the image URL as the input or upload the image. Now if I submit the form with this image URL, the image will be shown at the bottom and the predictions will be shown at the right side of the image. As you can see, the first row shows dog. Now let me upload an image instead and submit the form. This time the cat image is displayed and the predictions list is also updated where cat is the first label. After this app is developed, we will also deploy it to Heroku so that you can demo it to others if you want to. Now let's start to build the app. First of all, we need to initialize our Express app. I created a folder called react-express-clarifai and I'm currently inside the folder. In here, I will run npm init. And I'm just going to skip through all the questions here. Let's also run git init to initialize this as a Git repo. Now we want to install some dependencies, so run npm install express and body-parser. Now I will open this folder with my code editor using code space and dot. I'm using VS Code, but you can use whatever you want. Inside the code editor, create a new file called app.js. In here, we want to set up our Express app. Instead of watching me typing out the boilerplate to start the server, I'm just going to paste in the content. So you can pause the video and copy the code. What we are doing here is setting up a basic HTTP server that runs on localhost 8080, and when we access /hello, we will get back the hello text. Now go to the terminal. In here, we want to install another dependency, so run npm install --safe-dev nodemon. Now open the package.json file. In here, we want to update the scripts section. So we add in start with node./app.js and start:dev nodemon./app.js. Now save the file. Now let's run the app. So on the terminal, run npm run start:dev. And our app should be running on localhost 8080. So if I go to the browser and go to localhost 8080/hello, I should get back the hello text. Now go back to the code editor. In here, we want to add in a .gitignore file. Then we want to write node_modules/ we also want to add in .dstore and save the file. Now we want to update our app to allow users to submit an image URL to retrieve a list of predictions for that image. To do this, you need to create an account on the Clarifai website. After you have created an account, you can log in and should be able to access the portal page, and the first application should already be created for you. Click on the application. Now keep this tab open as we'll come back later to copy the API key. Now open the terminal and run npm install clarifai-nodejs-grpc and .env. The Clarifai package is used when we are trying to integrate with the pre-trained model, while the .env package allows us to specify environment variables using a .env file. Now open the code editor and create a new folder called routes. Inside the folder, create a new file called predict.js. We are going to set up our routes here to integrate with the pre-trained model. So we write const express is equal to require express. Then const router equals to express.router. Then we say const.env equals to require.env. Then we write .env.config. This will help set up our environment variables using the .env file. But let's create the file first. So .env, and we're going to add in clarifai_key equals to, then we can click on the copy icon on the portal and paste the key here and save the file. We also need to update our .gitignore file so that our .env file doesn't get checked into Git. Now on the browser, go to npmjs.com/package clarifai-nodejs-grpc. In here, we can copy over the sample code provided. So we can copy this block of code here and paste it to the predict.js file. And we want to update this key, your Clarifai API key, to our own key. So we pass in a backticks with key. Then we say process.env.clarify_key. Now define a function called predict_image that accepts inputs. And we want to return a new promise here. So we say return new promise that accepts, resolve, and reject. Now we want to copy over this block of code here and paste it to the promise. Now we need to do some adjustments to the code here. First of all, replace the value for the inputs with inputs. Then replace the console.log within these two if statements with reject. Now scroll down. Above the for loop, we want to write let results is equal to an empty array. Then inside the for loop, we want to populate the results. So we say results.push, and we pass in an object with name equals to c.name and value equals to c.value. So the name represents the label, while the value represents the probability. Finally, we want to resolve with the results. Let's also remove these two console.logs here. Now we need to set up our routing to use this function here. So we say router.post/. Then we add in async function that accepts request, response, and next. Within the function, we add in a try-catch statement. Within the try clause, we say const, and we take out image URL from request.body. And we say const input is equal to an array. Within here, we pass in an object with the data key. Then we say the data is an object where it contains the image, and the image is another object with URL equals to image URL. Now we say const results is equal to await predict image, and we pass in the inputs. Finally, we say return res.send. We pass in an object containing the results. If we encounter error, we are just going to return res.status 400 send, and it's going to be an object with error equals to error. Finally, we want to export the router. So we say module.exports equals to router. Now save the file. Now we need to update the app.js file to use the router. So at the top, we want to import const predict router equals to require./routes/predict. Then under the /hello handler, we add in app.use/predict. Then we pass in the predict router and save the file. Now our API should be ready. We can test it out using Postman. You can also use other API clients like Insomnia as well. In Postman, I have already added a request with the URL of localhost 8080/predict with the method of post. Inside the body, I switched to role with JSON. And for the content, I'm passing in an object with image URL equals to this sample image from Clarifai. This is how the image looks like. If I send the request, I should be able to see a list of predictions, and I receive the dot label with the probability of over 0.99. Now let me try out another image. So I will search for cats. And I will copy the image address for this cat image and go to Postman and replace the image URL with the URL I just copied and send the request. This time I'm getting back cat as the first label. I'm also getting back other relevant labels like cute and fur. Now let's start to build our front-end app. Inside the terminal, run npx create react app front-end. After the app is initialized, cd into the front-end folder. And we want to install some dependencies, so run npm install axios react-bootstrap and react-icons. Axios is a library that makes our life easier when making network requests to the backend, and React-Bootstrap and Bootstrap will provide some components that we can use when we develop our app. Then React-Icons provides us with some icons that we can use on our app. Now let's run npm run start to start our React app. and the app should be available on localhost 3000. Now let's do some cleanup of our React app. So I will select the app.css file, the app.test.js file, the index.css file, the logo.svg file, the report web vitals file, and the setup test.js file. And I'm going to delete all of this. Now open the app.js file. In here, we want to remove all the imports and update the div to only return hello world. Let's also remove the class name and save the file. Now open the index.js file. In here, we want to remove the ./index.css import and also the report web vitals import. And we can remove these lines here as well. Then save the file. Now we should only see the hello world text on localhost 3000. Before we continue, I just want to mention that I'm using this extension available on VS Code, so I can use some shortcuts to generate boilerplate codes for React components. Now open the front-end folder, then the src folder. In here, create a new file called input-image.js. We'll use this component to let user provide the image URL. Now I'll type rfc and tab to generate the boilerplate. Then at the top, I will import useState from React. Then import axios from axios. Then import form control and button from react-bootstrap. Within the component, I will add in useState to store the state of the image URL. And by default, it's going to be a sample image available from Clarifai. Now we need to update the return statement. So within the div, we pass in a form control with class name of mb3. This is going to add some margin bottom to this component. Then we say value is equal to image URL. Then we say placeholder is image URL and area label is image URL. Now we pass in a button component where variant is primary. Then within the button we say submit. Now let's create a function called handle change image URL, and it's going to accept the event. Within here we run set image URL to e.target.value. Now we can save the file. Now we need to pass in this function to the form control. So within here we say onChange equals to handle change image URL. Now save the file. Now let's import this component in our app.js file to see how it looks like. So import input image from /input image. Then instead of hello world, we are going to display the input image component. Now save the file, and we should be able to see the input image component. We also need to update our app to import the bootstrap CSS. So open the index.js file, and at the top we want to import bootstrap/this/css/bootstrap.min.css. Now save the file, and our styling should be applied. Now let's move this component into a container. Open the app.js file, and at the top we want to import container from React Bootstrap. Then we are going to replace the div with container and save the file. Now there should be some spacing around the component. Let's also add some spacing above the input image component. So we say div with class name equals to mt3 and save the file. If I try to change the value of the input image, the changes should be reflected on the input. Now let's update the input image component to make a request to the /predict API when the submit button is clicked. So under the handle change image URL function, create a new function called predict image. Then within here we say axios.post. Then we pass in /predict. And we pass in an object with image URL equals to image URL. Now we write the then statement where we get the response. For now, let's just alert out the result. So we say alert json.stringify res.data. Then for error handling, we can just alert out the error. Now go to the button component and pass in onClick equals to predict image. Now save the file. Now we also need to update our package.json file so that when API requests are made, it's going to point to localhost 8080. So under the scripts section, we add in proxy, where the value is http://localhost 8080. Now save the file, and we'll need to restart our React server. Now we can try this out on the browser. So if I hit submit, an alert should pop up with the results, where dot is the first label with the probability of over 99%. Now if I use a different image and submit it, this time I'm getting back cat as the first label, where the value is over 0.997. Now let's display the results and the image on the UI. Open the app.js file. In here, we want to store the state of the predictions and the URL of the image to be predicted. So at the top, we want to import use state from React. Then within the app component, we write const output set output to use state, and by default it's going to be an empty array. Then we say const image to predict set image to predict to use state, and by default it's going to be an empty string. Now save the file and create a new file called output.js. In here I will type rfc and tab to generate the boilerplate. Then at the top I will import table row call from react-bootstrap. Then we will receive props, and we can take out output and image to predict from props. Now I will remove the div here and instead return a row with class name of empty-3. Then within the row component, we pass in call. In here, we pass in a div with class name of mb-3 row justify-content-center align-items-flex-start. And within the div, we check if image to predict exists. If it exists, we want to render an image element with source equals to image to predict. Then we pass in style equals to an object. Within here, we say width is 100%. Then max width is 400 pixel. Then height is auto. Now we say out is equal to image-to-predict. Now we can close the image element. And if the image doesn't exist, we want to render a div with the text of image to predict will be shown here. Now we add in a second column with LG equals to 8, MD equals to 6, SM equals to 12, and XS equals to 12. Then within the component, we pass in a table with the hover prop. Then we say t-head, and within the t-head we pass in tr, and we pass in th with the hashtag. Now we pass in the second th with label, then the third th with probability. After the th element, we pass in tbody. Now we want to run the .map function on the outputs. In here, we return tr, and within the tr, we say td. And we want to display the number of the current row, so we say i+1. Then we pass in another td with o.name, and another td with o.value. Now save the file. Then open the app.js file. In here, we want to render the output component, so we import output from /output. Then after the input image component, we render the output component. We also want to pass in output equals to output and image to predict equals to image to predict. Let's also import the stack component from React Bootstrap and wrap the input image and the output with the stack component. Then we want to say get is equal to 2 for the stack component. So it's going to provide some spacing between these two components. Now we can save the file, and our table should be shown on the browser. Now we need to update the input image component so that it will update the state when we get back the response from the API. So open the file, and we want to update the function to accept props. Then we can take out set outputs and set image to predict from props. Then within the predict image function, we want to update the then statement. In here we say set outputs to res.data.results. And before the axios.post call, we want to run set image to predict to image URL. Now save the file and go back to the app.js file. In here we want to pass in the set outputs function to the input image component. We also want to pass in set image to predict to set image to predict. Now save the file. Now we can test this out on the browser. So if I submit the image is shown on the browser, and the predictions is shown at the right side of the image. If I use a new image and click on the submit button, we'll see the new image instead. And the predictions is also updated. Now we want to update our app to allow users to upload an image for submission. Before we do that, we need to install a new dependency on our Node.js app. So open a new tab on the terminal. Then go to the root folder and run npm install Mounter. This library helps us to handle file uploads in a Node.js app. Now open the predict.js file under the routes folder. At the top we want to import Mounter and path. Now instead of watching me type up the entire boilerplate to set up Mounter, I'm just going to paste in the code. First of all, we have this check file type function that is going to check if the file uploaded is an image. Then we have this upload constant here that is configured to use memory storage. And we have a file size limit of around 2 megabytes. We are also using the check file type function in the file filter. Feel free to pause the video and copy over the code. Now we can create a new route that allows users to upload an image. So scroll down, and under the first router.post, we want to add in router.post/upload. Then we say upload.single, and we pass in file. Then we say async function, and it will accept request, response, and next. Within here, we pass in a try-catch clause. Within the try clause, we say const inputs is equal to an array, and we pass in an object here with data as the key, and the data will be an object, and inside the object it has the image key, and image itself is an object with base 64 equals to request.file.buffer. So Mounter will help us process the uploaded file and put it into request.file. Now we say const results is equal to await predict image, and we pass in inputs. Then we return res.send. Within here we pass in an object containing results. Now for error handling, we can say res.status 400.send, and we say error equals to error. Now we can save the file. Now we want to verify if the API is working as intended. So open Postman or whatever API client you are using. Then we can fire a request to /predict/upload to get a list of predictions. I have already added a request with the URL of /predict/upload, and the method is post. On the body tab, I change the option to form data, and inside the body, I set the file key and change the type to file. For the value, I have attached a doc image. So if I send the request, a list of predictions is returned from the API, where the first label is doc, with the value of over 0.99. Now if I change this to a cat image and send the request, This time I'm getting back cat as the first label with the value of over 0.99. Now we want to update our front-end app so that the user can upload an image. So open the front-end folder, then the src folder, then open the input-image.js file. In here, we want to update the component so that the user can switch between submitting an image URL versus uploading an image. Now we want to import button group, form, stack, and toggle button from React Bootstrap. Then after the import statement, we want to write const input options is equal to an array. And within the array, we pass in an object with the name of image URL and value of image URL. Then we pass in a second object with name of upload image and value of upload image. Now within the component, we want to add code to manage the state of the method selected currently. So we write const input option set input option with use state, and by default it's going to be image URL. Now scroll down to the return statement. Now under the div, we want to render button group, and within the button group, we want to run the .map function of input options. Then we want to return toggle button with key equals to io.value. Check is equal to input option equals to io.value. Value is equal to io.value. Type is equal to radio. And we pass in variant. In here, we want to check if input option is equal to io.value. If it is, we want to say the variant is outline-primary, or else it's going to be outline-secondary. Then we say onClick is equal to a function that has access to E, and we run set input option to io.value. Now we can close the toggle button component, and within here we say io.name. Now we need to update our form control component so that it only renders when the selected option is image URL. So in here we want to check if input option is equal to image URL. If it is, we want to render the form control and the button. So I'm just going to cut this, and I will put a div here and paste in the content within the div. Now if input option is not image URL, it means that the user want to upload an image. For now, let's just return a div element with the upload image text. Now save the file, and we should see our toggle button at the top. Now I made a mistake here. This should be image URL, where URL is all caps. Let me save the file again, and this time we should see the form control for the image URL. Now if I click on the upload image button, it's going to display upload image, and if I click on image URL, it's going to switch back to display the form control for the image URL. Now let's put some spacing between the button group and the form control. So we want to replace the container div with stack and gap equals to 3. Now save the file. Now some spacing has been added between these two components, and our button group is now taking the entire available width. Now let's continue to update our component so that the user can upload an image. Inside the component, we want to add in code to store the state of the file object. So we say const file obj set file obj is equal to use state, and by default it's going to be null. Then below the predict image function, we write const handle file form control on change is equal to a function that accepts E, and we check if e.target.files.length. So if there are files attached, we are going to run set file obj equals to e.target.files, and we want to take out the first element. Above this function, we want to add in const predict image via upload. So this function will be called when we are trying to submit the image by uploading it. So we say const form data equals to new form data. The reason we are using form data is because we can't send image using JSON. Now we say form data.append file object. Then we say const reader equals to new file reader. Then we run reader.add event listener, and we add in load and the function. Within here we say set image to predict to reader.result. Then below the add event listener, we check if file object exists. If it exists, we want to run reader.read as data URL, and we pass in the file object. So this will help us to read the uploaded file and generate the data URL so that we can display on the UI. Now we run axios.post/predict/upload, and we pass in form data. Then we write the then statement with response, and we say set outputs to res.data.results. For error handling, we can say .catch, and we just want to alert out the error. Now scroll down to the div containing the upload image text. I'm going to remove the text here and pass in form.group. Control ID is file. Class name is mb-3. And within the form.group, pass in form.control. Type is equal to file, and on change will be handle file form control on change. Now close the form control component, and after the form.group, we want to render a button. So button on click equals to predict image via upload, and within the button we pass in the submit text. Now save the file. Now let's try this out on the browser. So I will click on upload image and select a file and submit the request, and we can see that the app is able to display the image uploaded and the predictions is being made on the right side. Now let me upload another image and submit again. This time the doc image is displayed and the new predictions is being shown as well. Now let's also update the predict image and the predict image via upload function, so that when we click on the submit button, it will first clear out the predictions made earlier to improve user experience. So before the set image to predict function call, I will run set outputs to an empty array. And inside the predict image via upload function, I will add in set outputs to an empty array as well. Now save the file, and now when we click on the submit button, it's going to clear out the predictions made earlier immediately, before displaying the new predictions. As a final touch, let's add a navbar at the top of the app. Open the app.js file, and we want to import navbar from react-bootstrap. Then inside the return statement, we want to pass in a div here and cut the entire container component into the div. Now within the div, we want to render the navbar component with bg equals to dark and variant equals to dark. Within the navbar, we say navbar.brand, and we say style is an object with display flags and align items center. Now we want to display an icon here, so import md outline image search from react-icons/md. Within the navbar.brand component, we render md outline image search, and we put in style equals to an object, and within here we say margin left to 12 pixel and margin right to 8 pixel. Now close the icon component, and we pass in the text of image recognition app. Now save the file, and our navbar should be shown on the browser. Now our app is finished. Let's deploy it. First of all, we need to build our React app and move it into the NodeJS app so that we can serve it as static files. So open the terminal or command prompt and go to the front-end folder, then run npm run build. Now go back to the code editor and create a folder called public under the root folder. Then copy all of the files under the build folder of the front-end folder into the public folder. As you can see, I have already done so. Now open the app.js file. In here, we want to modify the code so that it will return the front-end app when we visit the index page. So under the app.use/predict line, we add in app.get/. Then we pass in a function with request response. And we say return res.send file path.join __ the name build and index.html. Now save the file. Now if we visit localhost 8080, we should be able to see our front-end app. And I can submit the doc image and get back a list of predictions. I can also upload a cat image. Click submit and get back a list of predictions for this image. Now we want to update our package.json file to include the NodeJS version. So go to the terminal and run node -- version. Copy the version here and go to the package.json file. In here, under the scripts section, add in engines and we say node is the version. So I'm just going to paste in the version and save the file. We're going to use Heroku to deploy this app. If you don't have a Heroku account, you can create one for free by visiting this page. After you have created an account, download the Heroku CLI into your machine. The steps to install Heroku CLI will be different for different operating systems, but it should be pretty straightforward, so I wouldn't walk through it in detail. After the CLI is installed, run Heroku login on the terminal or command prompt and press enter. Then you should see a page that asks for your confirmation to log in. Click on the button and you should now be logged in to Heroku on your terminal or command prompt. Now go back to the terminal and go to the root folder. In here, run Heroku create and we are going to specify the name of the app here. I'm going to name it react-express image-recognition. Now because names are required to be unique, you likely wouldn't be able to use this name, so you will need to provide a different name. Now we can hit return or enter. Looks like the name is too long, so I'm just going to shorten it a little bit. This will create the Heroku app and also add a remote server to our Git config. So if we type git remote, we should see Heroku as part of the list. Now type Heroku open and we should be able to view the app. Currently it is displaying a placeholder page. Now we can push our code to Heroku. Make sure the project has git initialized. We can verify this by running git status. Now I will commit all of the changes by running git add all and run git commit -m and I'll give it a message of deployment. Then I'll run git push Heroku master. Now it seems like our app is built successfully. We can verify this by running Heroku open. And on our Heroku domain, we should be able to see our app. Now we'll need to update the environment variables of our app by visiting the dashboard on Heroku. So go to the dashboard page and click on your app. Then click on settings and click review config bars. In here, we want to add in our Clarifai key. Now we need to restart our dynos. So click on this more button here and click restart all dynos. Now our app should be working on the Heroku domain. So if I click on the submit button here, which will submit the doc image URL, I managed to get back a list of predictions for this image. Let me try to upload an image. This time I'm also able to get back a list of predictions for this image. So there you have it. Our image recognition app is completed. If this video has helped you in any way, a like will be very appreciated. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more contents like this in the future. Thank you for watching.